Hello, everyone, and welcome back for a new episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Our guests today are Terry Adkins and Jean Wise. Terry and Jean are authors of Iditarod, Sled Dog Tales and Tales. We'll just give you a little bit of a background, and we're going to go into more detail. But Terry was the only veterinarian on the first running of the Iditarod in 1973. He subsequently raced Iditarod 22 times thereafter. Terry and Jean currently maintain a kennel of Alaskan Huskies and belong to organizations that enhance the well-being, progress, and research of working dogs. Terry and Jean, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And I have to share with you, and I don't remember the exact date, but I went on a holiday to Alaska. I wanted to visit the Alaska Railroad. And I remember going up to, I took the Alaska Railroad from Anchorage to Denali to Fairbanks, and I believe that I think it was in Denali, or maybe it was Fairbanks. I can't remember. But there was a Alaskan Husky camp, and I got to meet these working dogs. And I have to say, I love dogs. My roommate has a cat. It's a little pain in the neck. But when you give me a dog, especially a Husky, I am like, I turn to goo because I just can't get enough of them, and just gorgeous dogs. And when, Amy Grisak, my friend from the Outdoor Writers Association of America, mentioned you last week, I thought, man, I need to interview you guys. And so here you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start off with just a little bit of a background about the two of you. Terry, why don't you jump in a little bit? Give us a little highlight of your background and how you came to get involved in the world of Iditarod and working dog type activities.
The Air Force assignment took me to Elmendorf, Alaska, where I was the base veterinarian. And being the base veterinarian, I was offered a team that was an Iditarod, or not an Iditarod, but an Air Force team back in the 70s that had been disbanded and shipped to Fort Yukon Air Force Station. Well, Fort Yukon, the boys were tired of taking care of sled dogs, so they tried to talk someone into taking them. And I was the logical receiver of Air Force goods, I guess. Anyway, I was the base veterinarian and involved a little bit with sled dogs. And Joe Reddington Sr. thought I was the most logical person to go along and oversee the care of the dogs on a 1,049-mile race.
Okay. So
I
I'm
was
curious.
talking to going along as a veterinarian.
I think that's pretty amazing. Now, going along as a veterinarian, were you on a sled? Were you in some type of support vehicle?
I was in a Super Cub for a while. I
Okay.
was in a 180 for a while, but they would fly me from checkpoint to checkpoint, sometimes returning to a checkpoint that I'd just left, and once landing on the Yukon River where I could examine a team of dogs.
Another quick question. As the base veterinarian, was your purpose strictly those sled dogs, or were there other animals that you were responsible for?
One of my big jobs was to go to the Aleutian Islands and inspect the seafood canneries.
Okay.
So I would go to Coal Bay and points beyond and look at salmon canneries and shrimp canneries, inspect them because the Air Force had contracts with these canneries. Plus, I had duties on the base, food coming in, food inspection, sanitary inspections. Yeah, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I was, like I said, the only sucker, a veterinarian that could be talked into going along on the first Iditarod.
Uh,
It was fun. It was totally enjoyable. And I thought, at one time, I think, I think I could do as well as some of these people that are racing. So in 74, I took a team over the Iditarod Trail, basically 12 dogs from out of the dog pounds around Anchorage and Elmendorf. And I completed the Iditarod and thought that I would not be back on it ever again. Wound up going to Shishmaref, Alaska, where Herbie gave me a good sled dog that I'd tried to buy the year before. Well, anyway, that's my reason for being in dogs, I guess, is I got one good dog.
There you go. You know, it's funny. I did an episode not too long ago, and I don't think I've had enough coffee to remember his name, but he raises hunting dogs, spaniels, and his comment was, "One good dog can change your life." And you've just repeated that story, so I love that. I love that. Gene, tell us a little bit about your background.
I grew up on a ranch in North Dakota, and um, I actually volunteered. I worked in Black Hills, South Dakota, and I volunteered. There was a dog sled race that came through the hills, and I volunteered to be a timer.
Okay.
And I first time I'd ever been exposed, and I thought it was pretty neat. And the people that organized the race, they were in dogs, and they subsequently got out. They offered me some of their dogs, then because at that point I had a Siberian Husky, and I was cross country skiing behind him, and so I added a few more dogs in, and then suddenly I added in a few more dogs, hit a couple races, and I ended up taking in several dogs that just they were good dogs. They just weren't working out in some people's programs.
Okay.
And had this hodgepodge of dogs. Nobody matched. They were great. They were just the really cool. I kind of developed kind of a cool little kennel. And then I took 2 months off of work in January and February, and I went on the road with them. And I just hit checkpoints and hit trailheads and hit some races. One of the kennels that I visited was actually Terry's.
Ah,
And a month after I was here, another friend of mine, another kennel that I had visited, had offered me a couple of pups. And that's a whole nother long story. But what happened is I went over and got those dogs, and Terry said, "Well, you know where you're going?" Because this guy lived off grid and where I was going. And I said, "No, I don't have a clue." And he's like, "If you don't know, you're you're not going to get there by dark and whatnot." Anyway, he said, "I've known him for years. What did I go along? You want to?" So here I am with these recreational motley crew of dogs, and I had Terry Adkins in my sled behind these dogs. We started off, and it was like going to the Grinch's house. There was just switchbacks, and it was steep, and there were no trail markers or anything. And Terry kept commenting, "These are some really, really good dogs." I said, "Yeah, they're doing a good job." And we go a little further, and he's like, "Boy, these dogs don't quit." And I said, "Yeah, they're fun to travel with." And we kept going, and then pretty soon he's like, "What are you gonna do with these dogs?" And I said, "Well, I'm having fun doing what I'm doing." And he said, "Well, you ever thought about partnering?" And he goes, "I have some good dogs too, but I'm getting too old to race." And he's like, "I think if we put some dogs together, we could build something pretty good." So anyway, here we are.